Hello everyone, Michael the Librarian of Magic here, finding and cataloging the magical and pointing you to it. Today is October the 22nd, looking at the calendar here, and I've got another villain drawing for you as we get towards the end of the month in the third season of drawing a Disney villain a day. With all of that information out of the way, let's jump into today's villain. Today's villain is Alameda Slim from 2004's Home on the Range, which is a bit of a forgotten Disney film, bit of a deep cut. Alameda Slim is basically a cattle rustler who is like this yodeling master who is able to lull cows to sleep so that he can steal them. It's kind of an interesting plot for a movie. The idea behind it is basically these three cows are trying to save their farm from foreclosure, and so they are sort of banding together their mismatched personalities. They band together to try to get the bounty for Alameda Slim, to capture him and get the bounty reward so that they can save their farm. And it's an interesting, quirky little movie. The Alameda Slim is voiced by Randy Quaid in the movie. And he also sings a song. Randy Quaid sings a song in the film. It's a yodeling song called, I think, Yodeladle-Leedle-Hoo, something like that. It's a bunch of yodel words. And he does a good job with that. Randy Quaid, if you kind of go searching for him nowadays, is a pretty divisive figure, a pretty extreme figure, and I figured, you have to address that to some extent or another. I don't think it's in the purview of this video or this channel to go too deep into Randy Quaid, because I neither want to disparage him as an individual nor encourage or validate his political point of view personally. I think it's just enough to suffice to say on this particular video, in addressing that I think Randy Quaid is a fabulous actor, and I've enjoyed his work over the years, and I think he's incredibly talented. And yeah, that's, much else digging into him nowadays needs to be said in this particular video. But many people will probably recognize him from his comedy roles in the 80s and 90s as Cousin Eddie from the Vacation series. He'd had a great little role in Independence Day, and so people probably recognize him from that stuff. He's the brother of actor Dennis Quaid. But he's also, an award-nominated actor. He was in a great movie called The Last Detail with Jack Nicholson, which earned him an Academy Award nomination. So he really is a fabulous actor. And yeah, his work is worth a view, essentially. So that's pretty much about him. There's a lot of interesting stuff about the film itself, and I don't know if there have been any books written about the production of this or documentaries made or anything like that. It would be cool to know if there are any, because it really is quite fascinating. After Pocahontas was made way back in the mid-90s, director Mike Gabriel, who was working at Disney, made a pitch for a movie that would have been basically... His original notion was basically to make the story of Captains Courageous, Rudyard Kipling's Captains Courageous, as a Western. The idea behind Rudyard Kipling's Captains Courageous is about a spoiled rich boy who goes overboard on a steamer ship and then gets rescued by a group of fishermen and eventually learns the rough fishing life and, toughens up and learns skills and things like that. And that was sort of the original pitch, and they wrote a treatment about it. And eventually, that morphed into, over the next couple of years, morphed into a movie that was tentatively called Sweating Bullets, which initially was about a timid cowboy who ends up in a ghost town and has to confront an undead cattle rustler named Slim. And there's all these like undead cowboys and stuff, which sounds awesome. That would have been such a cool movie, and it's so interesting. There actually is some concept art floating around that I found for Sweating Bullets, and the character designs and stuff for that look really cool. And that just seemed like such a cool idea. And I don't know much. I just in my cursory searches on the internet, I couldn't find much information about the various reasons why that couldn't get off the ground or fell apart, but it was in development for a long time. And unfortunately, they couldn't make that version of the movie get off the ground for one reason or another. It would be fascinating to know, like I said, if there is a book written about it or anything like that. Eventually, the story creatively took on a different direction about a little bull named Bullets. It was still being called Sweating Bullets, but it was about a little bull named Bullets who wanted to be more like the horses that led their herd, and he's trying to, change his personality to be more like them. And that concept kind of stalled in development as well, all the way to about 1999. In an attempt to... They had already a bunch of character designs from, that incarnation of the film and background art. They were starting to work on this film. And storyboard artist Michael Labash suggested the pitch for the Three Cow story, which is essentially the bones of the movie that we eventually got, called Home on the Range. In an attempt, they did that in an attempt to salvage a lot of the art that they already had. And it started to get further and further story problems, and eventually director Mike Gabriel and co-director Mike Giamo were removed from the project because of all these different story problems. And Disney brought in Will Finn, who previously worked for Disney Feature Animation and returned to the company after he had just got done working on The Road to El Dorado for DreamWorks, which is a fantastic movie, one that I really, really like and that I highly recommend. It's not Disney, but it is fantastic, a fantastic animated film. And also John Sanford co-directed with Will Finn on what eventually became Home on the Range, and they kind of worked with what they were given, salvaged the project, and what we ultimately got in Home on the Range is decent. It's a pretty good movie. It's not bad by any stretch. It's not the greatest work that Disney has ever made, but considering the creative struggles and turmoil that it went through, the amount of times it changed creative direction as well as actual directors and all of that stuff, the movie that we got is pretty decent considering all of that. On a lot of other productions, that amount of turmoil and struggle would have totally doomed the picture, and I don't think this is a totally doomed picture. They had enough good animation talent and enough good voice talent, and the music was done by Alan Menken. He was still had a long-term deal with Disney, and he made, he wrote the music largely for this film, and it's a decent movie. It's not the greatest, but it is not bad. So considering all of that, it's, pretty amazing. But also, man, just looking at the concept art for the original Sweating Bullets with the undead rustlers and stuff, what a cool idea that would have been. Another cool thing about this movie, or an interesting piece of trivia, is that it was the last traditionally hand-drawn animated film that Disney Feature Animation did until 2009 when they made The Princess and the Frog. And then I think they haven't done any since The Princess and the Frog, but they kind of revisited it 5 years later in that one last time. Will Finn, the eventual director of Home on the Range, I think at one point that I read, famously said that he felt like he was brought in to build a coffin for traditional animation, that this movie was sort of like, killing the art form because it's just showing that we don't need it anymore or whatever. And I think that at the time that just had a lot to do with the struggle of the project and the disappointment of the project. I don't think that traditional hand-drawn animation is dead. I don't think it has to be dead. I don't think that Home on the Range is a bad enough movie to build a coffin for traditional animation and all that kind of stuff. But I understand his disappointment and his struggle with the picture. But that's all kinds of stuff about Home on the Range and how we eventually got the story about Alameda Slim trying to rustle these cattle. They sort of just kept combining different elements over the years of what they switched, and eventually we ended up with this character. And yeah, it's kind of just a weird, quirky story, a weird, interesting movie. Kind of experimental. Some cool ideas were there, and it just didn't work out the way they originally wanted it to. And yeah, like I said, it'd be interesting to know why, in more detail about how all of that went down. It's a fascinating era of Disney animation. They were really trying a lot of different stuff. Things were up in the air. Leadership was changing at various levels of the company. So yeah, that's kind of what's up with that. It's a very interesting topic. So I hope that you found that interesting and informative, and maybe you want to go out and learn some more. I certainly do. This is not an exhaustive video, and I don't know everything there is to know about this one topic, and it seems like there's a lot there. So thanks for watching this. I hope you join me tomorrow and every day for the rest of the month when I have another villain drawing. And until then, have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.